Hello everybody, this is Tim here again with another video. This time I figured, I've been doing some re-reviews lately, why not re-review the entire Terminator series? Now Terminator, the original, is a classic. Some of my thoughts on these films have changed over the years, and some of them are kind of the same. Just jumping in the first film, from 1 to 4 stars, I'd easily give it a 4. I think it's an awesome film. I don't think it's a masterpiece. It is dated a little bit. Most of the stop motion in the film with the actual Terminator does look pretty good, but every now and then you get a shot that looks a little dodgy, and some of the effects, like when Schwarzenegger is looking in the mirror or whatever, with his messing with his eye and all that, that does look a little weak. But overall, though, the effects have extreme B-movie charm to them, and the original Terminator is pretty much a horror flick, which is why I think it really works, because it is pretty much a slasher film. This original Terminator is a 4 out of 4 awesome horror slasher flick with the Terminator as the villain, Schwarzenegger as the villain, who does a great job here as the evil Terminator. Linda Hamilton does a great job here as well, starting out really meek and kind of getting a little tougher by the end, which will continue over into Terminator 2. And Michael Biehn as Kyle Reese, the savior of Sarah Connor, trying to protect her. Well, he does try to protect her, but also at the end, she, I guess the term mans up and then saves herself by squishing the Arnold bot in a hydraulic press. But Michael Biehn, he does a great job here too, but he kind of dies like really wimpily at the end. He just kind of like, he puts a pipe bomb or whatever in the Terminator, and it blows up, and he like rolls away, and then Linda Hamilton goes to check on him, and he's just pretty much dead. He just randomly dies like that. I guess he just died from his wound from where he got shot earlier in the stomach or something. But it just kind of seems anticlimactic for his character. It would have been better if he would have died like fighting the Terminator or something, actually. But yeah, but Cameron wanted Linda Hamilton to like rise up at the end and take the Terminator out herself to make her arc feel stronger, to become tougher. I like that, but at the same time, there should have been a little bit more oomph for Kyle Reese's death. It is a little wimpy and a little anticlimactic the way he just clocks over. But yeah, overall, 4 out of 4 awesome flick. A little bit dated, but overall awesome. Terminator 2 Judgment Day is an amazing movie. Easily the best science fiction action flick ever made. 4 out of 4. The liquid metal Terminator in this is awesome visually with his silver top body and all that, and great performance by Robert Patrick. And just the special effects of him are the other half of the coin that amp him up to make him amazing. That's one of the things that really makes T2 stand out so much, is the effects of the liquid metal Terminator and all that, and just the amazing like epicness of the action and stuff in this with the special effects of the liquid metal Terminator versus Arnold and all that. That's one of the reasons why the other Terminator sequels after this can never measure up, is because of the fact that this movie was one of the first big special effects shows with all these CGI effects and all that, digital effects, with him transforming into people and all that, to do it really well. It's one of the first ones that did it really well, or is the first one really that did it really well, or this amazing. The Abyss did pretty good at it, which was another Cameron movie, but this one really takes the cake in terms of the morphing and everything. And that's one of the reasons this one stands out so much and is such a hallmark of cinema, because it's really the first big blockbuster to achieve these effects as pretty much as best they could at the time, and still holds up today. So that's the reason why this one stands out so much. And nowadays we get a blockbuster film with CGI effects every other week, so you can't get that same oomph with a Terminator sequel anymore. You just can't do it. So that's one of the reasons why the rest of them just can't measure up to this T2. Yeah, overall T2 is an amazing movie. Edward Furlong is probably the weakest link acting wise, but he does a good job. Overall, an amazing film. Arnold is awesome here as the hero. He's easily the best Terminator, easily. I'll go ahead and rank the Terminators. Arnold's number 1. Number 2, I would put T-1000. And then number 3, I'm just doing top 3. Number 3, I would put the Rev 9 from Terminator Dark Fate, which I'll get to. I think that actor Gabriel Luna did a good job. Did a great job in that movie. Terminator 3, this one I went back and forth on. I'll say this: most of these Terminator movies after T2, I can enjoy as just Arnold flicks, because nothing's really ever going to measure up to T2. But having to judge them in comparison to the first 2 films and coming after, and judging them as Terminator films and not just as Arnold movies, critiquing them as actual Terminator films, Terminator 3 is alright. It's alright. It's an alright time waster. The biggest problem with this movie is that it just repeats pretty much Terminator 2 all over again, with Arnold having to protect John Connor again. And the other thing this movie does is it makes T2 kind of completely pointless by saying that Judgment Day is inevitable no matter what you do. You can change time, you can change the timeline and postpone things, but it'll always circle back around, and what's going to happen is eventually going to happen regardless. But at the same time, though, when Schwarzenegger bot or whatever comes back with T-101, he's like, Judgment Day is inevitable. But that's not true. If Schwarzenegger, if he would have when he went back in time when he first got there, if he would have told them, if he would have been programmed by Kate Brewster in the future, who's the one that reprogrammed him, if he would have been programmed when he came back to specifically tell them that Catherine Brewster, your father, is the only one that can stop Skynet from happening, because he's the one that has to, press yes on the keyboard in order to launch it. Like, if he would have said that when he first got there, they could have went on a straight mission to go directly up to the military base to where her dad works and just tell him what's going on and show him Arnold's, metal arm and all that and what's going to happen. And that would have just stopped Skynet right there. It would never have happened. There wouldn't have been any Judgment Day. If Arnold Bot would have just done that, that would have prevented it. Again, that would have stopped it. So yeah, even if it wouldn't have stopped it completely and it would have happened another 50 years down the line, it still would have delayed it like for friggin' ever. And then they could, sorry about that, and they could have just worried about it again by the time it got there. And by then there would be somebody new in John Connor's shoes as the new savior. But yeah, they could have easily have stopped the Judgment Day that happens in this film. So on one hand, I appreciate that the film has a darker ending with Judgment Day actually happening and it tries to advance the series at the end. But at the same time, it was completely preventable if they would have just did that from when they started out at the beginning of the movie, when Arnold first showed up. If that would have been their mission to do, they could have stopped it. But yeah, overall, this is an alright time waster film. It has some good action between Arnold versus Kristanna Loken as the TX. Kristanna Loken, I think, does a great job here in terms of acting, and she is an upgraded version of the T-1000. She is more advanced than the T-1000, but at the same time, she's also less durable than the T-1000, making her easier to kill, but more powerful at the same time. This is a Terminator built specifically for weaponry and destruction instead of like battle resistance, because where she's liquid metal over an endoskeleton or whatever, it means that she's just a covering though over an endoskeleton. It means that she could still be squashed or just blown up to pieces, unlike the T-1000 who could just go back together. So she's easier to destroy, but she packs a lot more power. Because she has nanotechnology on her hand, she can shoot like a nanotechnological gun or whatever, plasma rifle and all that, and like completely blow a T-1000 to pieces and then just reprogram it to kill itself or whatever with her, her nanotechnology, which she can control other machines. So she's more powerful than the T-1000, but at the same time, she's weaker because she's easier to destroy. So it's a 50-50 trade-off with the TX. So that's what's weird about this one. But yeah, overall, Kristanna Loken does a great job, but the way she's presented in the movie makes her a lesser villain, because this movie doesn't focus on the horror elements like Terminator 1 did and part of T2 did. It just tries to make her more sexy. Kristanna Loken, obviously a beautiful woman, she looks great, but they focus on her like being sexy, and they got her in like this sexy outfit that looks like Sharon Stone from Basic Instinct, and automatically right there, you're going down the wrong path, because you need to make the Terminator imposing. Just because it's a female doesn't mean you need to play up like it's sex appeal and all that. They should have made her like a badass, tough chick like they do the Grace character in Terminator Dark Fate. Here, though, they just try to make her like sex appeal. They want her to be tough, but at the same time, they want her to be tough in like a sexy way instead of like a badass, tough way like all the other Terminators are. And that's where they missed the boat. That's where Jonathan Mostow, the director, messed up. That's where they messed up. So overall, it just makes her a good, fine villain, but it makes her weaker to watch in the movie because she's just less intimidating and less scary, because the way she's told to play it and the way she's filmed is just like in the fashion of a sexy chick, so that's why it doesn't work as well. Nick Stahl, I think he does a good, fine job as John Connor. Some people don't like him. I've went back and forth on him. But the reason some people don't like him is because he's not like the badass, hero, like a weapons expert John Connor people would expect. Instead, he's more like just an evolution of the Edward Furlong John Connor. Like, this is what I would picture that John Connor growing into. Like, he's still the same, like, kind of bratty kid, doesn't want to be involved in anything and all that. Anti-authority kid or whatever he was in the second movie. It's the same thing. He's not really advanced any, and that could be a problem for somebody, but at the same time, this is what I would picture Edward Furlong growing into, that character anyway. So it doesn't really bother me. And Kate Brewster or whatever, she's a poor substitute for Linda Hamilton. And the other weak thing of this movie is it is mostly just a repeat of T2. It makes T2 pointless, but at the same time, it's just a repeat of T2 of Arnold protecting John Connor. And Arnold's this is his weakest performance as a Terminator, not because of his acting being bad, but just because he just has a lot less to do. He's just back to protector mode, or blank mode, like he was in the first movie. He's not, he hasn't learned how to be human or anything. He has no arc like he did in T2. Here, he's just back to blank mode, so it's like, he's fine. Overall, though, 2.5, it's an alright time waster. Terminator Salvation, I think, is the worst of the franchise, mostly because it's the most cobbled together and senseless plot that makes no sense in a lot of places. Like, feels like huge chunks were just taken out of the script or the screenplay before filming. Because you got, the movie should be focusing on John Connor, played by Christian Bale, because it's after T3, and it's when the war against the machines, but they don't. They're focusing on this brand new character, Marcus Wright, who's executed at the beginning. We never find out what he did, and it's supposed to be a whole redemption arc for him by the end of the movie, but we never found out what the hell the guy did to be redeemed for. And he never seems evil in the movie, or he never seems like the type of guy that would do a mistake. We know that he accidentally somehow got his brother in some cops killed, but they never explained how. I guess he was doing something illegal, but they never go into detail whatsoever, which makes his character arc pointless. It's stupid. And then the machines at the end, they get Kyle Reese, and you start to think, well, maybe they're not killing Kyle Reese, they just want to kill John Connor because they need Kyle Reese to go back in time in order to protect Sarah Connor, so to ensure that the machines are born, you know, maybe like it's a loop, you know what I'm saying? Because the technology that was left over by the first Terminator or whatever in the first movie is what led to the creation of Skynet. So, but at the same time, they're willing to kill John Connor, and if John Connor's dead, then Kyle Reese ain't gonna have no reason to go back in time anyway. So it doesn't make any sense. And they don't explain it. If they would just had the machine say something like, well, we have to kill John Connor now because according to our theories of time travel, if we kill Kyle Reese, that somehow undoes whatever. I mean, they don't explain anything. And they got like, in the movie, it just looks too much like a Mad Max film. Overall, I appreciate the fact that they want to do something new with the whole future war and everything, but in doing that, it also makes the film feel more bland, because one of the cool things about Terminator is the time travel aspect. Seeing more of the future is kind of cool, but it doesn't look anything like the Cameron future. It just looks like a Mad Max movie. Seeing more of the future is a cool idea, and focusing more on the future war could work, but at the same time, though, it just makes it more of a generic war movie. That's all you're really left with. So I know as kids, a lot of people are like, I want to see a future war movie, and we finally get something like that, and it's just kind of a generic war movie. There's really nothing there. Like, the heart of Terminator probably really is the time travel stuff, but you just have to come up with something new for the time travel story instead of just, let's stop Judgment Day again. That's the problem. They're just regurgitating the same type of time travel plot instead of doing something different with it. But yeah, overall, this is 2 stars. It's okay, like, time waster. This is not one I would ever want to look forward to watching again, but it's not the worst thing I've ever seen, but it is the worst Terminator for me. Terminator Genisys next. This film, it's a reboot of the series. Jai Courtney as Kyle Reese is bad. Jason Clarke as John Connor, who ends up turning into a bad guy because he gets programmed by nanobots from the new advanced version of Skynet from an alternate timeline called Genisys. Jason Clarke, I think, does a good job here. I actually like his nanobot Terminator or whatever, the T-3000 or whatever. I actually like it, and I like the design of it. I think it looks pretty cool, where it's like black and like covered with nanobots. This one actually feels like an upgrade of the T-1000. This one feels like a more powerful Terminator than the T-1000 because he's like pure nanobots. He can like stick to stuff and everything. He can only be destroyed by like a huge electromagnetic pulse, I guess, kind of like at the end where they like blow him up in the time displacement equipment. So yeah, in the way, I do like this Terminator more than the Terminators they tried to put in T3 and T4. At the same time, even though he's more advanced than the T-1000, he's not filmed as well, and they lose, once again, the horror aspect is lost from that as in T1 and T2, so it doesn't come off as intimidating. But overall, I think the actor does a good job. I think Jason Clarke does good. Emilia Clarke does good for what she's supposed to be in this film, which is like the surrogate daughter of Arnold. But at the same time, she's way too young looking to be playing Sarah Connor. She comes off like she's playing the role like a 17-year-old teenager, and it just doesn't work in dynamic-wise for Jai Courtney, who obviously looks 30-something. So it doesn't flow at all, especially when they're supposed to be a romance. And Jai Courtney is hugely miscast as Reese. He tries. It's not his fault. He's just miscast in the movie. Emilia Clarke is really miscast as well for trying to be like a new Linda Hamilton, because she does not work. She has a little bit of the look on her face, but she doesn't fit because she's just too short, and she's just too little looking, just too young looking. She looks like a kid, so like a teenager. It doesn't work. But when her and Arnold are like talking together and all that, I do like some of the repertoire, like back and forth with each other, where I do laugh a little when she says, like, when they play the father-daughter stuff up with her and Arnold, it does actually work pretty well. And Arnold's performance in this is great. It's probably the best performance in the movie. Well, I would say it is the best performance in the movie. J.K. Simmons is here for only a little bit. He's underused. But Arnold's performance in this is better than T3. He is great here, and he gets a lot more to do. Is like having the gray hair and everything, being like an old Terminator, who also is like a father figure for Sarah Connor. And they have like a surrogate family in the movie. I really like that, the surrogate family they have in the movie. That's pretty cool in the way it's put together. But yeah, Arnold's performance here is better than T3. Overall, when this movie starts out and everything, they're showing some stuff like from different angles from the first 2 movies and all that before the timeline gets changed, and they got to deal with Genisys, who's like the new version of Skynet. It was kind of feeling like, you're just kind of showing me the same stuff. And when Emilia Clarke has to regurgitate lines from the first movie, like, now, soldier, it's pretty bad. But when it gets more into like its own movie with them versus like Jason Clarke, I have a little bit more fun with it, and I appreciate that they're at least trying to do something new. Where it's not just regurgitating the same thing. But once again, they fall into the same trap as T3 did. We have to try to stop Judgment Day, where it's just a repeat of the same thing again. And that's what pissed me off. Overall, this film is probably a more interesting concepts and stories than Terminator 3. I'm sorry if you hear traffic in the background. I always do these videos outside pretty much now. But This movie has more interesting concepts and more interesting story than T3, but at the same time, it's has worse acting because Jack Courtney is awful. I can deal with Emilia Clarke for what they're going for, whether even though she's not Linda Hamilton, but Jack Courtney is awful, and he really weakens this movie. So overall, I would give this a 2.5 out of 4 as an all-right time waster. But Arnold's performance is much better here than T3, and he gets a lot more to do. Overall, this one's all right. It's close to T3 quality, but it has a more interesting story, but worse acting. So overall, yeah, it's all right. It's close to T3 in quality. All right, time waster. Up next is Terminator Dark Fate. Now, judging this one in comparison to the first two movies, because it's pretty much yet again another reboot that is trying to be a direct sequel to Part 1 and 2, being an official T3 because it's got James Cameron's involvement, who helped write the script, I believe, and produced it. I'd give it a 3.5 out of 4. Honestly, I like Dark Fate. I think it's pretty good. No, it's not on the level of Terminator 2. It comes closer to Terminator 1 in quality, but that one has more heart, so it beats it. So it's not as good as Terminator 1 and 2, but for a Part 3, it's pretty good. At the same time, though, they kill off John Connor. I know this pissed some people off, but personally, at this point, I'm tired of John Connor. And also, at the same time, when I watched Terminator 2 as a kid, I was never someone who, like, fell in love with Edward Furlong. Apparently, he developed, like, a huge fan club because of Terminator 2 or something. When I was a kid, I never knew about that. I never cared. I always loved Terminator 2 for Arnold, really. I didn't really even care about anybody else. I just thought the action was cool, and I liked seeing Arnold kick ass. That was really it when I was a kid, and I just loved the special effects. Like, I was never like, Furlong, yeah! Like, I had nothing against Edward Furlong at all, but I was never, like, a part of the Edward Furlong fan club. So the fact that they killed him off, I'm like, I don't care. I mean, on one hand, they could have just kept him around. And I liked Edward Furlong in T2, don't get me wrong. I didn't hate him or anything, but at the same time, if they're going to kill him off for the sake of giving Sarah Connor a more interesting arc in the movie and a more interesting dilemma with having to work together with Arnold, who she hates because it's his Terminator model that kills him, then I'm okay with that. Because if you didn't do that, then Linda Hamilton would have no real character arc or anything to, like, grasp onto dramatically in this movie, and it would just be her and an older John just for helping these new people fight, and it would just be more of just a standard action movie like T3 was. And that, now, you need something more to grasp onto for a Terminator film. You need some type of heart or emotional type story to grasp onto. So the fact that they killed off John to further, like, Sarah, give her more of an arc, I appreciated that. I like that because Sarah Connor has always been more interesting than John Connor. I'm sorry, she has. She has. And you can say maybe they should have made John Connor more interesting in the later sequels, but I'm not sure anything they did would have done that, because John Connor is just supposed to be the ultimate savior, and having the story of the woman who's like the one who has to birth the savior and also be protected and all that, who had built up with 2 movies beforehand, you're not going to have John Connor take that character's place. It's not going to work because we've already spent 2 movies with Linda Hamilton, and where she was a much stronger character. So it's not going to work by trying to replace her with John. So you can't do that. So at the same time, just having her and John here working together, helping these new characters, there wouldn't have been no dramatic weight to it. There wouldn't have been anything there. Another thing I've heard some people say is, like, it makes Terminator 2, also pointless, just like T3 did. No, they still stopped Judgment Day in Terminator 2. They still defeated Skynet. It's just simply, realistically, if you defeat one apocalypse, eventually the human race is going to just kill itself another way. That's reality. That's what is going to happen eventually in the world. The human race is going to do something that destroys themselves. That's what's going to happen. And so here it is again, and they're trying to prevent a new apocalypse. That's simply realistic. That's what's going to happen. That's what would happen. So I didn't mind that, but at the same time, at first when I was watching this, I was like, well, you really don't need Linda Hamilton for this movie. You could have just had this be a new start with a new, like, Terminator or whatever, Grace going back in time, augmented human, kind of like Universal Soldier, protecting the character Danny. Like, you could have just done that story and just been done with the John Connor story and all that, and just started over with these all new characters, is what I'm saying. But by having Linda Hamilton and stuff here, it does give it a bit more weight to it, more oomph, because it connects it more to the first 2. So I got over that after a while. The Rev 9 in here, played by Gabriel Luna, I think does a great job. I think he's entertaining and really well done here in terms of acting, and I like the fact that he's, like, basically 2 Terminators combined in one. This is the best Terminator since the T-1000. Better than John Connor was in the evil John Connor in Genesis. Yeah, overall I'd give it a 3.5 out of 4. It's not perfect. When I say 3.5 out of 4, I mean it's a pretty good sequel for a 3rd movie. It's not amazing or anything. I like the fact that it's darker and has a bit more of a dark edge in terms of tone and plot, because John Connor as a kid dies and all that, than what was in T2, which was a bit more lighthearted. Still had that darkness to it, but was a bit more lighthearted. So I like that this one's a bit closer to Part 1 in tone. But at the same time, it's not perfect. The chick who plays Danny, she does good in terms of what's asked for her in terms of trying to act, but she's completely miscast. She looks like a little kid. She looks like a 17-year-old, and when she tries to sound tough, she comes off bad. Those are the scenes where she is bad. When she says the F fate speech in terms of future flashes, or flashes to the future, it's pretty bad. You don't get enough of the dramatic weight of like the relationship between her and Grace. It's almost like, it's like a mother-daughter relationship, because she pretty much raised Grace in the future. If they would have shown flashes to the future or whatever, where she was like training Grace as a kid and all that, and protecting her and everything, and bringing her up, that would have made it more impactful. And there are one or two maybe extra scenes on the Blu-ray or whatever of the deleted scenes of this movie that are much better with her and Grace or whatever in the future, Danny and Grace, where it's much better than the fate speech scene. That if you would have put those in and take that scene out, this movie would play better, and the Danny character would play stronger, because that was a pretty bad delivery and just a pretty bad scene. And when they put cornrows in her hair or whatever, they're trying to make her look older, she just looks like a little kid with cornrows. It looks stupid. But yeah, and the other thing in the movie is that I like that she is the John or whatever of this universe now. She's not like having a kid or anything. She is John, so they're protecting the John, the Savior. But I don't like how all the characters act like they're so surprised, like, she is John. It's like, it's not that big of a shock, man. Like, we're way past, like, in terms of history and movies and stuff, of the idea that a woman can, like, lead or whatever. Like, there's been thousands of movies already that's done that. Like, we're way past that. That's not some big shocking revelation or whatever. So, yeah, that was pretty weak. But, yeah, overall, though, the action was good here. No, not as good as T2, because, once again, we've pretty much seen all the spectacle that could be possibly done nowadays. But yeah, overall, pretty good movie. I like Schwarzenegger's arc of how he killed John Connor, and he's like grown a conscience because he's been on Earth, so long now, and he's like developed a surrogate family. It's pretty cool, and how he sacrificed himself at the end to try to redeem for Sarah Connor the fact that he killed her son. I like that, how he developed a conscience. That's pretty cool, because he's become so human. Yeah, overall 3.5 out of 4, and I like how it wraps back around to the first movie, where at the end of it, it's Danny and Sarah like driving off into the distance to go try to face this new future of Legion and everything. And this movie bombed. It's not going to get a sequel, and if we ever get another Terminator, it will be a reboot, probably starting all the way over, and I'll probably cast The Rock in Arnold's place or something. But yeah, overall though, it was pretty good. I liked it. It's definitely not as good as the first two, but it feels proper for like a third film in a series. And to me, this is the official T3, and pretty much redeemed the Terminator series that was pretty much going down a crapper by this point up until now. But yeah, it's not going to get a sequel, so having it bookend with like the way the first movie ended, with Sarah driving off in the Jeep and all that, with her and Danny doing it here, I think it's pretty much fine. Pretty much ends the series and caps it off perfectly. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you again.